Do the rich get richer? So this was a question that was brought up on the on HK Lord's podcast the other day, and I wanted to address it because I've seen it in other posts as well. And this is, it's fundamentally the comparison between the proof of work algorithm versus the proof of stake algorithm. So proof of stake is the algorithm that like NXT, Peercoin, and bitshares use for its consensus algorithm, whereas Bitcoin is based on proof of work, and most of the altcoins are based on some type of proof of work system. So let's just give a little background first about what the rich get richer means. So proof of stake, instead of everyone contributing mining or hashing power to provide the consensus algorithm, proof of stake is just by the mere fact of holding large coins or a large amount of coins gives you a percentage vote in processing transactions. So essentially the longest chain or the consensus is determined by the majority coin holders voting. And as a result of that, the network fees that are paid out to the nodes that actively vote and participate in processing transactions, those fees get paid in proportion to the people holding the stake. So it's kind of probability based. So just like in Bitcoin, you have a probability of solving a block. In a proof of stake system, you have a probability of being selected to process that block based on the percentage of stake that you hold compared to the other people that are actively in NXT. They call it forging. You'd still call it mining, forging, whatever you want to call it. It's the process of running a full node and holding stake. That's your processing blocks for the network. So what the argument says is proof of stake is geared towards the people with lots of money. They get paid more, and while the absolute value is more, the percentage is the same. So a person who gets who holds if you've got a person that holds 1% of the stake, and a person who holds 0.1% of the stake, the person who holds 1%, 1 out of 100 blocks, they're going to get to claim that, and so they'll 1 out of 100 blocks, they'll get the fees from that block of transactions. Whereas someone with 0.1%, they're going to get 1 block out of 1,000. So 1 out of every 1,000 blocks, they'll statistically, if they leave it running long enough, they'll process those blocks and get the fees associated with those transactions that they process. So while this total amount is higher, the percentages are exactly equal. So the claim so if you just look at this doesn't make sense. I mean, because if everyone's growing at the same percentage, their relative wealth and relative value remains identical. If you take 1% plus 1/100 and 0.1% plus this amount, this ratio remains identical. So there's your relative value, relative wealth remains the same between a person who holds more versus a person who holds 1/10 this amount. But to make this argument make sense, what they say is, well, okay, people with larger amounts of wealth, let's say you have your living costs, and this living cost, this bare minimum cost is identical. So if someone has only let's say they have $1,000 to invest. Well, they need 500 of it just to survive, whereas this person has $10,000. So he has 10 times the wealth. So still, he only needs $500 to survive. So that remaining, so this guy only has $500 to invest, whereas this guy has $9,500. So that's where they're making the claim that the rich get richer quicker, is because that they've got this fixed cost plus this extra cost. So they have more capital to basically invest, which then if you run, you use this ratio, Now he's got a lot more than 10 times the wealth if you look at the amount that they can invest. And that's why his amount is going to grow faster than this. So that's the argument that they're claiming why proof of stake makes the rich get richer. So I think this is the wrong way to think about it, and let's just kind of walk through why. So first of all, let's make one distinction here. I'm going to try and not talk about distribution. In the Bitcoin side and a lot of the altcoins, the mining is both fees and the initial distribution of the coin. So today, I really just want to talk about the fees part of this, because in proof of stake, the original distribution is already done. And so we're just talking about mining and the fees. Now, distribution on the Bitcoin or Litecoin, this is going to tail off, and over several years, there won't be any more distribution. Well, it's actually a lot of years. It's about 100 years. I don't know at what point it'll be so minuscule that it doesn't matter. Maybe that'll be 50 or 60 years. Not sure about that. But so I really just want to focus on the fees part of this. Now, with Bitcoin, if you're in the space, you know that currently, if anyone asks about mining, just search on Reddit. People say, don't mine, it's not worth it. And the reason is because it's gotten so competitive. Mining in Bitcoin, you actually need a large investment. You can't just use the video card in your gaming PC anymore. You're not going to get anything. You've got to essentially make a huge investment in a dedicated piece of hardware designed for Bitcoin mining. There's some, maybe the Antminer is one of the, I've not looked in the space recently to see what hardware is out there, but so your initial investment over here is actually now larger for proof of work versus proof of stake. And so people will tell you on Bitcoin, just buy some Bitcoin because that's the easiest way to actually own Bitcoin. Now, what I'll say is, in life, the rich get richer. I would say yes. Always, if someone has more relative wealth, they're going to be in a better position to invest and make more money because of this kind of living expense. So I think in the general sense of how life works is, yes, the rich can get richer if they they have an advantage. They don't necessarily always get richer, but they have an inherent advantage by having more wealth, and they can grow their relative wealth faster. And that's so. I think from a currency point of view, you can't really take this living expense into account. Now, the reason why you can't is no matter what system you come up with that you think, the nirvana would be that somehow you could tie each one person to an account and that they would get maybe an initial distribution or some kind of discount. I don't know what kind of framing you want to put that in. And then, so that would kind of equalize this living cost, and then maybe put a percentage growth on top of that. The problem is that whatever system you can come up with that can be gained by someone with more wealth. So for a lot of people said Bitcoin, any one person can have a laptop. Well, the wealthy person down the road, he probably has multiple laptops. He probably has multiple gaming PCs with GPUs. I've thought a lot about this, and maybe there is a way, but ultimately, my conclusion is that there is no way to create an anonymous system that gives that you can actually penalize the rich, essentially, because I don't think any anonymous system that you can create can always be duplicated or bought off by someone with more wealth. And so ultimately, any system that tries this is actually favoring the wealthy even more. So if you tried to say every account in this cryptocurrency, whatever it be, has initially starts with 500 coins, and then they can grow on top of that. The people with more wealth can find a way to impersonate that in some way. So that's why, from an anonymous point of view. And I think the only way to truly give underprivileged people some kind of advantage is if it's really tied to a single individual. And at that point, it's no longer anonymous. I don't think, maybe someday someone will come up with a system where you can tie an anonymous ID to a single person, but I don't see how that would be possible, but I don't know the future. However, in today, the system that helps out underprivileged people, essentially, I think that is the role of government. So if you want to give people with less wealth, if you want to give at some level, want to give them an advantage or some kind of safety net, that is the role of government. And so if you add government in here, this kind of can potentially help out the people who are now. While I think very limited support should come from the government, and I'm more somewhere in between libertarian and Republican in terms of that. I think maybe some, in severe instances, helping out underprivileged people is a good thing. Some kind of unemployment. I think we have unemployment way too long, but definitely unemployment. The idea I think is good. But anyways, we're getting into politics here. I don't really want to talk politics, but I don't think you can design a crypto system currency that will in any way give an advantage to single account holders that cannot be taken advantage by people with more wealth. So I think the answer is how to prevent that. Because if you try, again, if someone takes advantage, they're actually getting wealthier even faster. And let's say, taxes. Taxes is a good example. Is we try to tax, people with more wealth at a higher rate, but what ends up happening is because they have so much more wealth, they can actually spend. It makes sense for them to go spend $2,000 to create a shell corporation and put all those taxes in, so they can actually get lower tax rates than us small individuals. Because they have so much wealth, they can, and the more complex system you build, the easier it is for the rich to get richer quicker. Because they can pay the people. It makes, at a certain point, it makes sense for them to pay people to do these complex things that give some, some kind of savings. So I'll summarize all that in that the best possible system is one that pays out perfectly in percentage based on stake. And if you pay out perfectly based on stake, everyone's relative holdings stay identical with if you remove living costs and look at just the amount that's in the cryptocurrency. And I think that is actually the most ideal system that prevents the rich from getting richer quicker. I don't think there's any other way that you can do that besides using government or tying somehow the system to a unique individual. And at that point, it's no longer anonymous. So let's talk about specifics around, proof of stake. Some people may say, "Oh, well, proof of stake. Not everyone's going to be online. You may have, certain people that without enough stake, it doesn't even make sense to, participate or forge." So specifically with NXT, you've got leasing now. So someone who has just 1,000 Next, they can lease their Next to another person to forge. Because, so again, if you only have a 0.00001% holding, it's going to take so many blocks that it may not be worth your time to forge. In order for you to receive any fees, it's going to take so long, it may take you years to get any kind of return. And it does cost a little bit to leave your PC on, leave it connected to the internet, and have it do the forging process. So it's not completely zero cost. Now, how NXT gets around that is account leasing. So you can lease your account to lease the power of your coins, your stake, to another account holder that has more, so you kind of consolidate that a little bit. And then when they forge blocks, they can pay you a percentage. So it's essentially like mining pools, except for NXT. So what that gets you is now almost anyone, unless you've got a very small amount of NXT, almost anyone can participate in the forging process. And right now, the only barrier to that is it costs 1 NXT to forge, to say, or to lease my account to another person. And the fee structure on Next will be going down over time. I think 0.1 is kind of the planned next change. I don't know when that'll happen, but these fees will go down over time and make it even more fair so that anyone can participate. Now, bitshares uses kind of a unique approach where only 100 voted members are actively forging. So what happens to the people with fewer coins? Well, you can essentially use your coins to vote for nodes to process stake, and each node advertises, it says, hey, I take 50% of the fees for myself, or maybe only 30%, and then the rest that I get in fees actually distribute out to the entire, every account holder based on percentage of stake. So each one of these people that are running a forging node in bitshares, they do pay out. It's like one big forging pool. And the cool thing about that is, how do you take a small amount of coins and distribute it to everyone evenly? That would create lots of transactions. But the cool thing is they said, hey, we can actually do that just by destroying the coins. So by destroying the coins in one transaction, you can actually redistribute that wealth instantaneously across every account holder perfectly evenly based on their percent of holdings. It's just, you're burning the coins, so everyone's percent share of the total increases proportionally. So that's kind of a unique way to do that. Ultimately, I believe that the entry cost to get into mining actually makes the only mining, you have to have thousands of dollars in order to even start the mining process. So that excludes a lot of people. In NXT and bitshares, $100 you can buy enough. You can buy some coins and get some value from the fees that are processed in the network. So ultimately, I think proof of work actually, at this current state, it's more advantage, provides a bigger advantage for the rich than the proof of stake. So I think this argument is completely false, because they're using it to basically attack proof of stake, whereas I think it's actually, proof of stake system is more fair than a proof of work system. All right, that's it. I think I've talked enough for now. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and click subscribe to watch more videos like this. Thanks.